Hey Elliot, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you, Josh?
Doing well. I'm looking forward to this conversation here. We're approaching the end of 2025, and I like to get together with my wife this time of year and talk about the upcoming year and set some goals. I was just curious, are you kind of a resolutions type person or a goal setter?
I'm not. I'll be quite honest. I'm not. However, I think the biggest thing is I want to be very intentional about this particular year. Coming up to the crossing over point in Phi, and of course, I goals just to me has like a burning sensation in my brain just because that makes me think of corporate life is I got to go set smart goals, and so when I hear goals it gives me a little bit of a shudder, but
So I would think though that you've been on this FI journey now for I think we 10, 12 years, maybe a little longer than that. And along the way you had to have set some kind of goals because otherwise you would have just been continuing to fly by the seat of your pants and not gotten to the point that you're where you currently are. So I know that you're probably joking a little bit saying that you're not, but there's got to be some form of goal setting that you've had, at least in the past, that maybe you've automated, whether it be savings rate or whatever, that has gotten you to this point.
yeah, absolutely. I would say certainly earlier in my fight journey, there was a lot of trying to say, okay, well, hey, if I want to get to this point, then I gotta do all these steps to eventually land where I want to be. And so really work on trying to reverse engineer that destination that I want to be at and work backwards. And so whether it was saying, "Hey, if I want to retire in 10 years," or I don't remember. I think it was like the number that I have in my brain at least is like 7 years. Was I think straight out of the gate that was like, oh yeah, if I could be done in 7 years, that would be fantastic, right? I don't remember what the savings rate had to be to equate to that, but I think that time span was specifically called out in Mr. Money Mustache's article somewhere. Does that ring true to you as well?
Yeah, that sounds accurate. And I guess just in hearing that what you described, that it's probably you weren't relying on the end of the year as necessarily a stepping stone for how you're going to plan out the preceding year. It was like information got to you, or you were seeking it at any given time, any random time, really. And you were like, okay, I'm going to take this information and then set myself a goal now. And it could have been, you could have, it was very arbitrary. It could have been happened in May or July or November. And you put that you took the steps to put that plan in motion as opposed to saying, okay, starting in January, I'm going to do this.
Right. Yes, to put it very precisely, being a follower of James Clear is belief in not goals but systems, right? And so as soon as I got that new piece of information, tried to incorporate that into my life and really build a system around that. So as
Hmm.
soon as I got that new piece of information, try and pivot as soon as possible.
Yeah. So going back to resolutions for a moment, was there ever a period of time in your life where you used the end of a year or starting of a new year to set some sort of a well, I'll back up here just for a second. So I looked this up this morning because I was kind of curious the definition between a resolution versus a goal. And a resolution typically is a lot more vague, like I'm going to lose weight, or I'm gonna lose 20 pounds, something like that. Whereas a goal is I'm going to do these things in order to lose weight. So I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to make sure that I have vegetables in every meal. I'm going to reduce my calories by 500 or whatever. It's more like you said earlier, it's a smart goal, and the outcome is the resolution that you have. So was there ever a period in your life where you set any kind of resolutions, and either were you successful or fail at them? or you just haven't ever been.
Yeah,
That's never been
I
a part of
mean,
your life.
no. Yeah, no, there were many times in my life where I feel like I tried to either do New Year's resolutions or set goals for myself, and then ultimately I felt like it was very defeating because hey, maybe I was progressing along very, very well, and then all of a sudden I hit that bump in the road for whatever reason, and I feel like I fell off the wagon, and I don't get back up. So, and maybe in the to put that negative bend on it, even in a positive light, just like James Clear says in his book, is the goal orientation of, hey, I've accomplished a goal. Well, then you always have to have another goal right behind it to feel like you're not just immediately like, okay, now what? So trying to focus my mind more on systems these days. But yes, to answer your question succinctly, yes, there was a time. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think back in my when I first started to understand the concept of resolution. I mean, probably whenever I was a teenager, early 20s, it wasn't even something that was on my radar. But as I got into my, I don't know, like mid to late 20s, early 30s, where you heard the concept of resolutions, that I then started to really like half-heartedly make some, and probably wasn't very successful until I got to more of, like you said, developing processes that were in support of a goal as opposed to a resolution, because you could make it. We talked about my financial situation in our origin stories, and the decade of the 20s and then the early 30s, I was making just so many poor choices with my money that I would probably give myself a very vague resolution, like I'm going to get better with money this year, and having no real idea what that would look like, or steps that it would need to be taken to get better, until I started reading some of the FI stuff, and then started to set goals, like I'm going to increase my savings by 5%, or I'm going to contribute this amount to my 401k. So it was more like developing the process as opposed to just getting better. And ultimately, the resolution, if I had set that, I had fulfilled it, but it wasn't because I just said, hey, I'm going to get better at money.
Right. Yeah, precisely. I mean, the statement of just saying I'm going to be better at, or hey, I'd like to lose weight, or I'd like to eat healthier, you know, those are great visions, but I think to actually quantify, isn't just a measurable goal. And in any way are you going to just be successful with that sort of planning? I think you have to really get down to a more concrete level on something that you can actually execute across.
And so you mentioned that you're going to be more focused this year because you're reaching that crossover point. So what are those? Is there anything specific you'd like to share that you want to get more concrete with as you are nearing the end, so to speak?
Yes, to make it sound so morbid. No, I think I got a call from a mutual acquaintance of ours, Douglas, who we know and met from economy, and he asked me what we were talking about today, and I said, New Year's resolutions and goals, and he's like, "Oh, do you have some of those?" So I at least got to think about this for a little while today, but I would say that my answer was that I've put out a timeline for when I hope to achieve financial independence, and my goal for this year is to be moving more activities of my quote unquote perfect day, whatever what I want my FI life to look like, into the practice of what my everyday life actually is. So I think a lot of people would mention, as you have FU money and things like that, that you can start to do certain activities and things that maybe you weren't able to do previously. And I think that's kind of more what I want to do, is say, you know, I I can think that probably in this past year is some of the first times where I've started to push back a little bit at work and say, you know, I normally work 7 to 3, and but I work for a global company, so sometimes it is having meetings that are outside of those time periods, etc. And in the past, I would have just always capitulated, like, oh, hey, we need to meet with somebody at this time. And I finally started to push back a little bit and say, like, hey, like, does this have to be done today, or can we talk about this tomorrow? And so, as tiny as that might be, that is one way to say, hey, I'm valuing my work life balance and my time with my family more, and that's what I want my fi life to look like. So trying to put in some more boundaries, or boundaries in the confines of work, but ultimately reserving that time that I have said, hey, this is focused for this purpose, spending time with my family. That that is sacred to me.
Yeah,
How about you?
that's really good. I maybe take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to goals because I kind of like them, and I don't know. I may fall into that category that you were referring to with James Clear that you mentioned, where you feel like you have to continuously set new goals and achieve them. And I maybe have a little bit of that in my personality, as much as I kind of somewhat fight against it, I would say. But I think that it inspires me to some degree, and I kind of do use this time of year. I don't know why that it. I mean, it's. I guess it's just natural because you're looking at the end of a year and you're looking forward to the year coming up. And I know for my wife and I, we've often used this time to just. Neither of us are working right now. She's on vacation for like a week and a half, and we'll just kind of talk through some of the things that we've enjoyed from the previous year and then discuss what we want to accomplish for the following year. And in past years, we've talked through like things that are more like concrete to our real estate business, just as an example, where I looked back at a couple of our lists that we've had, and usually we don't get too carried away. We'll have like 4 or 5 goals, if you will, or resolutions, usually just goals though, that we're like, okay, we want to buy an additional rental property this year, or these are the list of improvements that we want to make to our rental properties. So we did some of that this year, but we're not interested, or I'm not interested in purchasing any additional properties. So we've left that off the list. But I definitely do like having the opportunity to come to a close for one year. So I guess maybe it's a little bit of that corporate mindset holdover where I'm like, okay, did we achieve the things that we wanted to achieve? If not, why? And then as we look up ahead, what do we want to do? Another category that we like to look at is vacations and trips and things like that. So we've had a couple of years of some pretty heavy travel, and we're looking ahead at 2026, and we're like, okay, we have 2 or 3 trips planned. We have 2 together. I have a third one with you, and then we're like, that's it, really. Right now, we might sprinkle in some short 1 or 2 night weekend getaways and things like that, but we're not looking to do any too much more extensive traveling than that, at least this year, at least at this time, and things might change. But that's just gives us an opportunity to kind of think through what the next year is going to look like. And I think that both of us, she and I, will always kind of have this type of mindset, because otherwise we look at some of the people that can just, I'm joking, but some people just fly by the seat of their pants, so to speak. And that's just not in our nature. We're planners, and we have to have that outlook, and it doesn't mean that we'll stick to it. And of course, throughout the year, things will change. New opportunities will come our way, like this podcast did for me in the middle of the year last year, and other things. But it is for always been for me a good time to reflect and sort of reset, and then look ahead and get some of those ideas down and put them down into some form of a document that we can just reflect on throughout the year as we sit back and look at like our budget or whatever it might be. Even though they might not be financial goals, we will put them into our quote unquote our budget, just so that it's like a common place that we can look at them together. and that it kind of helps guide us throughout the year a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to hear the word planner, despite, I mean, obviously your former occupation and everything else like that, I would say that I certainly have always considered myself a planner. You know, I remember from my college days, we were handed an agenda from our school that, you know, I was pretty meticulous about just writing every single thing down, you know, due dates or, you know, whatever outings I had and highlight them when it was complete, you know, things of that nature. So, I mean, I totally get what you're saying as far as, hey, this is how I'm going to execute on this goal. I achieved this goal. Now I'm going to move on to the next thing. So, despite maybe feeling like I fly by the seat of my pants a little bit more these days than I ever did before, I certainly feel very grounded in that type A planning category as well.
Give you an
Yeah.
example of something that's on my list here, and I I I almost feel compelled to putting this. Lori was kind of teasing me the other day a little bit because these are things that I could have accomplished by now, but I've just sort of dragged my feet, and they're all around health. So I consider myself a fairly health conscious person. I exercise. I try to maintain a healthy lifestyle. But a couple of the things that I've sort of let go, and this is just laziness, for lack of a better word, is a dentist. I don't remember if I've told you this or not, but whenever I left my job, we had to transfer over to Lori's insurance, and my dentist that we've been going to for probably 15-ish years did not take her dental plan. So all I would have had to do at that time, this is going back to like May of this year, so 7 months. I learned this shortly after leaving my full time job, is that all I had to do is find a dentist under her plan and move. And I have not done it. So I have not been to the dentist in 2025, and I'm embarrassed to say that. I take care of my teeth, but at the same time, I have always followed the every 6 month checkup, with the exception
Sure.
of this year. So I guess I've technically missed two dental appointments. So that's one of the things. The other one is I'm I'm approaching 50 now, and I have not gotten a colonoscopy. And then the suggestions vary a little bit between the age of 45 and 50. There's no history that I know of in my family, so I think I'm closer to the 50 range. But it's one of those things that I just have continued to push. And then the reason why is because I don't have a primary care physician. And that's another thing that so I've never been a person that has been, gone for annual physicals or anything like that. And it's something that I need to do a better job at. It's like, if I need some kind of medical attention, I'll just go to the urgent care. If it's worse, then I'll go to the ER, which thankfully I haven't had to do that much, but I probably need to get, just an annual physical, talk through the steps of whatever it is that I need to do at my age, whether it be blood work or like colonoscopy, things like that, and make that a priority. So that's a thing that's like on my list for 2026 is a goal for just making sure that I'm taking care of myself in the new year.
I was going to say, sounds like you need a health accountability buddy over there. So
Yes, that's you, Elliot.
that's me. So, all right. I'll come harass you to get your certain things done here. Is a dentist, primary care physician, and colonoscopy. I can harass you over these things.
Yeah, and I don't know how to hold my feet to the fire, so to speak, or what kind of fun we could have with this. But I almost do need to have somebody, even, I mean, Lori usually does a pretty good job, but you and I both know like how that goes in a relationship. Sometimes you can easily just say, okay, yeah, I'll get to it, but I haven't. But if it was where I had to go back on this podcast and tell hundreds of people that, yeah, I'm still being lazy, that might be something that might be a little bit more motivating for me.
That's right. Exactly. I know, because I think, keep me honest, I think you and I even talked about doing that at one point in time, is having kind of a workout, accountability, you know, accountability partners throughout that for each other to say, yeah, I know, like, obviously, I don't know how many of the our listeners know this. Obviously, anybody that knows me personally does, that I just had surgery, and so I have been going through my own recovery process. But yeah, like getting back into the swing of working out and doing all of those things, just anything health related, yeah, it's very important to me. I mean, I think you hear that more and more in kind of the five space that I don't think you always heard initially, was most important thing really should be your health. I mean, everything else should take a backseat to that. You should be willing to spend the money on that, whether that's, gym memberships, equipment at your house, whether that's if you need a personal trainer to get it done, then go hire a personal trainer. Like, it's going to cost more money, sure, but like ultimately your health is what matters the most. So, yeah, I know that is something that is still deficient in my own life. So, yes, maybe you could be my accountability partner there, and I'll keep you honest about my own health concerns. Because I did just get a new primary care physician this year, and I know I know people going through colonoscopies and everything else. So, you know.
Yeah, I'd love to do that for each other as we get into this new year and create this goal for ourselves. And I think, going back to your point that, health should be the number one priority. I totally agree with that, because what's the point of getting to this point in life where you have now all this freedom that, I mean, the most important thing is that you should be taking care of yourself and trying to ensure that you can live that lifestyle for as long as possible. But you don't necessarily, well, yeah, I should back up. You don't want to wait until that point. I hear a lot of times that people will say, yes, whenever I'm no longer working, I'm going to be able to have time to focus on my health. I'm going to be able to have time to eat better, all those things. And then to me, like you said, it should be your top priority, so that you're doing that before you get to that stage. Because if you're not taking care of yourself now, there's a good chance you might not be take care of yourself then. And it almost has a compounding effect, where the earlier you start, the more of a habit that you create, the more likely it is that you're going to get into that situation where work is optional, or you're not working, and you will continue to maintain that lifestyle or habit. And it's going to have just tremendous rewards for you.
Yeah, I mean, inertia is very real in each decision that we make, right? I know the Donegans kind of talk about, I forget what phrase they specifically use, but you know, each decision that you make, you can think of it as you're casting a vote every single day, and ultimately, like, I'll use the example of going out to get fast food. Well, if you're voting with your dollars to go out and get fast food right now, like, turns out probably in FI, like, you're still going to make that choice. And so, like, I know in my own life, I have talked about this on the podcast. We're in a serious stage of life where we have young kids. Every once in a while that does occur, but making that, an infrequent occurrence, and how I've tried to offset that in my own life is I am now the primary cook in our household, and that I try and make healthy, good food at the house as frequently as I can. So I'm giving myself the grace to say, yeah, hey, it's not going to happen 100% of the time every time, but most of the time I'm controlling my own destiny to make myself healthier, make my family healthier, and ultimately have good food that costs us less money than even going out to eat. So it's good for my health, it's good for my wealth, you know. Just one decision.
Staying on food just for a minute there, I had to share this. back in before I left the full time job, I made a list for myself. I think I shared this in a earlier episode where we were talking through like here's my list. You mentioned or you called it your lists upon lists. And it's very true. And some of them I haven't even reflected on very much at all since then. I had to dust this one off. It was a list that I made for myself, which was how I will spend my time. And it was all the things that I was already interested in, but there was like some new things that I thought that I wanted to spend some more time on. And then there was a couple of things that were newly added to the list or added to the list, I guess, after I stopped working, like this podcast and like running and a couple of other things. But one of them was, I called it culinary, which is really, I was really going out on a limb there trying to like sound like I was going to take things to the next level. But I put be creative, plan some meals, grill and or smoke. And my thought back then was that I really wanted to just put myself more into the role of being a, for lack of a better word, like the chef, the guy that's going to be able to prepare the meals and get creative and do some new things. And I just, it's not something that really lights me up. And Lori and I were just talking about this the other day. I get, I'm not, I get impatient, I guess, or get frustrated when it comes to doing things in the kitchen. I can easily go and make breakfast. It's super simple. I can make eggs and a meat of some sort, and it's really easy. But when it comes to putting a bunch of different ingredients together, that like I don't know, it exhausts me, if that makes any sense. And then the idea of, I've heard these guys that'll smoke a brisket or whatever, and it takes like 12 hours or getting up at 3 a.m. to get it started or something like that. And I'm like, I have no interest in that. So I think I think that it's good to also know that you can remove goals or resolutions, whatever you want to call them, at any point too, because they don't necessarily light you up or fit your lifestyle or interest you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true. Is truly know thyself and accept that you're like, yeah, that's cute that I thought that that was going to be my new life, but no, it's not reality. Is like, I'm sure, yeah, maybe conversely, one that is yours and one that probably isn't mine. I know I've always had this in my mind that I want to do woodworking. That, I think I know you've seen my garage. I have certain tools that you're like, why in the world do you have that? It's like, so aspirations, but when the rubber goes to hit the pavement, doesn't always hit. So I get it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, it's funny those hobbies that we think we're gonna get into that they just don't stick for whatever reason. And it might be that we hear, I know for me it is anyway, that I hear it from a friend or on a podcast. I'm like, that sounds like a really great idea. And then you start to invest money or time into it, and ultimately to learn that, yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hopefully this podcast doesn't fall into that category, Elliot.
No, no. I think we're doing pretty well. I mean, actually, so that's a good question. Is do you remember when we actually started? Because I know when we first started, we said we kind of challenged ourselves to say, yeah, hey, we want to make sure we make it to a year is kind of our measure of success, to say that, hey, we gave this a fair shake and see how we feel. I mean, I know that you and I have talked about this throughout the process, not necessarily on the podcast itself, but yeah, to me, and I know to you, this isn't something that either of us see dying anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we started recording in August, if I'm not mistaken, and then we released the first handful of episodes at the beginning of September. And believe it or not, on my list, my Google Word, or what is it, Google, whatever it is, the Google file that I
Google
created,
Sheet. Yeah. Uh-huh.
sheet, thank you. I did put on there 52 weekly 9 to 5 podcast episodes for 2026. So front and center for attention for my attention there. And, ongoing, I expect to be continue to have this level of motivation. We'll see how things shake out, but I know we have lots of ideas on our shared list, and I feel like we're getting to a point now where we're just kind of a little bit more freely adding different topics that aren't necessarily on that list, or we're moving them around. And one of the things that we tried to make sure that we took that away from Doug Cunnington, was that we wanted to make it sustainable. And I think that we're getting there now, where it's not taking up a considerable amount of our time and energy. And as long as we keep heading in that direction, I don't see why we couldn't just continue to have these conversations. How about you?
That's right. Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way. Much more fluid. Don't have to feel like we have any robotic scripts that we have to churn out here. And all joking aside, yes, these conversations have been a lot of fun, and it's reducing any friction that I think we would have perceived that we would have encountered over time.
We can add that little disclaimer on this episode that none of this was created or supported by any kind of AI.
Yeah, that's right.
Be one of the first ones.
All chicken scratch from Josh and Elliot's mind.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah, so I think we have gotten to the point where we've talked through a couple of these items, and we agreed to be each other's accountability buddy. How often do you think we should check in?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to ponder this before I immediately sign up for something that I'm like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? But no, actually, it's pretty funny. I have, with it being the end of the year, I've still been going to physical therapy, but that ends on 12/31. I could continue to go, but of course that's when my health insurance resets for the year, and I had hit my maximum for the year. So of course any additional PT session was just like, what's more money that the insurance company's paying. However, that resets at the beginning of the year, so I told my physical therapist this morning that, and this was also under the guidance of my surgeon, saying, hey, like, you can continue to go to physical therapy if you feel like you're getting value out of it, but ultimately, like, you can go to the gym and do the same things without the guidance of them. So I'm getting to that point where it's like, all right, well, now it's how much of it is just on me, and that might be a good point to start being like, all right, how many days a week do you need to be getting into the gym and working yourself to make sure that you're feeling ready?
Have they been able to give you, like, I guess, instruction that you can then take and do at home? Or is there like specific equipment that you're using there that you don't necessarily have access to elsewhere?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. There's certain activities that I'm doing right now at physical therapy that of course changes over time. So like when I started, I had different exercises that I was doing than what I'm doing now. So now, I mean, initially it was building more strength. Now some of it's more agility, range of motion, that kind of stuff. But I mean, a lot of that stuff is still things that are available in most conventional gyms, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah. Sounds like you just need to get out and play some disc golf.
That's right. Well, and I did certainly think about that, and the one thing that still probably scares me more than anything else right now is hard, uneven surfaces. So that's the only thing. But as long as I'm not like sprinting around the woods on, after a round of disc golf, no, I mean, walking should be fine. So
And just like anything, I mean, you could just take it very, very easy and slow and just do like 2 holes, 3 holes, whatever it might be. And then the
right.
next week do 3 or 4 and just slowly increase. You don't have to go out and do 18 holes your first round.
That's right. Have you played yet with everybody?
I have not. I haven't. No, the time that we were going to get together with Tim, it was a lot like today. I think it was like below 20 degrees, and I was not ready to sign up for that.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. Maybe you and I can go at the same time, and I will follow your lead, and however far you can get, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 holes, I'll be like, yep, that's perfect. I'll head out with
Sounds
you,
great.
Elliot.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fun. I'll look forward to it. And yeah, no, I'll have to think of my cadence to come harass you on making sure you get your health objectives ticked off the box so that you take care of yourself in the new year.
Yeah, I'm thinking check in a month or so, and it doesn't necessarily have to be monthly, but it may as well hit the ground running and try to get something going here pretty soon, and that way I can have build some momentum and continue in the right direction throughout the year.
That's right. Well, sounds good. Josh, is there anything else that we want to leave our listeners with all these ramblings that we've had today?
I don't think I have anything else specific to resolutions or goals, but I think one request that I'm going to ask is from anybody that might be listening and made it this far into the conversation. If you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on any kind of podcast player, if you could do us a favor and go into YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll try to leave a link to that anywhere, but it should be 9 to 5 podcast that's on YouTube. One of the things that I think that you and I would both like to see, Elliot, maybe as we continue in this journey, we're spending some additional money for better equipment so that we can sound the best that we possibly can. And if there's any way that we could earn a couple of dollars back from this without getting into ads and things like that, I don't think either one of us are really interested in that. But a free way that we could be supported would be if we could get some subscribers, which we need 1,000, and we're only at like 50 something right now. But if we could get some subscribers and get some listens, maybe we could earn some AdSense money, which would help benefit the show. And yeah, we'll see what else we can do to try to maybe earn back some of the money that we've spent to create this. And yeah, we would like everyone's support if you're willing to do that. It's pretty easy and free. Just click subscribe in YouTube.
Well, thanks so much, everybody. And Josh, as always, it was good to catch up. And until next time,
For sure. Thanks, Elliot.
see you, Josh.